My third match of Age of Sigmar, my Kharadron Overlords versus Dave's Soulblight Grave Lords at 1,000 points. Dave was a pleasure to play against. He is a true gentleman gamer, and I have to say his army is one that I really quite like. I've always been a fan of the old vampire counts, and his beautifully painted Blood Knights were larger than I thought they would be on the table, and that excellent blood red armor, they were a joy to look at as we played. Now, the scenario is similar to Border War, but there are 5 objective markers represented by these nice big discs that represent the objective and the radius you must be within to capture them. 2 of them in each of our territories, and then 1 right in the middle. My plan was a bit different in this battle, to sit back with most of my force and rely on my shooting, and especially keep my Arcanauts back a bit so they don't die right away, and be very aggressive with my Engine Riggers and my Gun Hauler, my 2 flying units. Now, Dave got the first turn, and most of his army is slow with the zombies and the skeletons. I should say he has his degenerate vampire, monstrous Vargeists on his one flank, and then he has his Blood Knights in the center. He has a big mob of zombies with a Necromancer supporting them, and a unit of skeletons, and his army is led by a Vampire Lord. He advances up the middle with his knights, and he puts his Vargeists very aggressively on my flank. Now, I went for the seize the center battle tactic, which fit in with my desire to be more aggressive with my flying units, and I flew them right up the center to capture that center objective, scoring me a bunch of points, succeeding in the battle tactic as well. On the flank, the Vargeist advanced, and that's where I had Dreki, and I was very aggressive with him and sent him right in after them. I believe I killed one of the Vargeists with shooting, but Dave was able to bring it back to life with some vampire trickery, I believe. Nonetheless, I, heedless of all danger, charged Dreki right in there, and he managed to kill another one of the beasts with his mighty axe, but then the fury of the Vargeist was unleashed, and they cut him down. I was quite worried that my flank would collapse at this point with Dreki dead, but the Thunderers were able to bring down one of the Vargeists with shooting, as I used a command ability that allowed them to shoot in Dave's turn as he advanced, as I'm getting better with using these command abilities. But the final Vargeist closed the distance and was thrashing in the midst of the Thunderers, but even then they can hold this position and set to work firing on the beast even as it's in their midst, but they wounded it, weren't able to kill it, but then they made good use of their heavy gun butts and they bludgeoned the beast to death at last, and my professional soldiers held that flank and that objective for me. On to the center, of course, the Blood Knights charge the Engine Riggers. I had brought down one of the knights with shooting, but they are really quite tough, being vampire knights. And then my Engine Riggers, my brave Engine Riggers with those wonderful aethermatic saws that I love, killed another vampire knight, but then were swiftly dispatched by the remaining vampires. Now, my Arcanauts and my General, Engine Master, had moved up behind my flying units and had bellowed orders from the ground from my Engine Master. The gun hauler got the heck out of there with my II Captain rule. They were able to retreat from the battle without taking any damage and then shoot in the same turn. So I unloaded everything on the Vampire Knights with my Thunderers on the left flank. My Thunderers on the right were still fighting the Vargeist, I believe. And all the weapons from my Arcanauts and my Gun Hauler, and I think I killed one Vampire Knight. And then we came to the melee as the Knights met my doughty Dwarven warriors head on. They hit my poor Arcanauts hard, and combined with some vampire magic from their lord, half the Arcanauts were felled. My Engine Master whiffed on his first round of attacks, but with combined fire from outside the combat, as you are allowed to shoot in combat, and the attacks of my Arcanauts, one of the Vampire Knights was brought down, and then with a great swing from his Aether Might Hammer, the Engine Master felled the last Vampire Knight at last, leaving the center of the board open. Now, I moved very aggressively still with my gun hauler to move up and shoot at his vampire lord, which did absolutely nothing. This vampire lord, or should I say lady, then assaulted my gun hauler, leaping upon the deck and beginning to spill the blood of the pilots. They were completely terrified by this fearsome lady, ripping them apart on the very deck of their ship, and they retreated immediately, and were able to luckily shake the vampire lady loose, though they barely escaped the fight and they did not contribute anything else in this game. Now it was time to try and move up and take the center once again. I was in the lead. Dave was the underdog uh, because I had done pretty well with my battle tactics. Not only had I got to seize the center earlier in the battle, but I had completed Slay the Entourage as I picked the Vargeists that were part of his general's regiment to as my target, and taking them down my Thunderers gave me a bunch more victory points. So Dave was forced to move up with his zombies and attempt to contest the center, and of course my Argonauts and Engine Master came to blows with them. This was a bit of a slog though, as zombies of course are rather difficult to get to, especially with a necromancer supporting them. Plenty of them died, and a few wounds were dealt onto my Engine Master and my Argonauts, but nothing really happened there. But fortunately, I had more ground, as of course the zombies are quite slow. They weren't able to move up enough to contest the objective, and I held on to that objective with my fighting Argonauts. And I protected myself from further vampire magic damage with my Voidstone orb that I bring on my Engine Master, which I very much like, which allows me to dispel one spell automatically. The vampire lady furiously charged my Thunderers on the right and began to swiftly tear them apart, but it all mattered not as this game swiftly came to a close. These objective-based Sigmar battles so far have been limited to 4 battle rounds, which was really quite good for me, so that the Thunderer unit didn't get ripped apart by the Vampire Lady. And I must say, the Kharadron Overlords had the advantage in this battle. Being that we had objective markers in our own territories, I could sit back with my Thunderers and lay down withering hails of fire, while the skeletons and zombies sitting on his objective markers contributed nothing to the battle. I think if we had done the scenario that I saw next in the book, which had all 3 objective markers all in the center, that Dave probably would have won that, because it would have been very difficult to shift his zombies and skeletons off those objectives should they charge up to the center, which surely they would have. Nonetheless, this was still my first victory in Age of Sigmar, and with my Kharadron Overlords, who I'm coming to love more and more, with, I believe it was 26 victory points to 17 in the end. It was a very fun match, though. It was really close, as we both had, at the end of the battle, nearly identical points values left on the battlefield, and the victory points as well were neck and neck for much of the battle. But with Dave's Vargeists and Blood Knights going down, there wasn't really too much he could do to utilize to secure other objectives and gain points, as all he really had left were skeletons and zombies, and his Vampire Lord wouldn't have been able to do everything on her own. So, an advantageous situation for the Kharadron Overlords, but I'll take it for my first victory. Huzzah!